And we're going to look at the history of disability pride. We talked about how there's kind of like this clash between youth leadership within disability and then the old school way. But I think one of the most important things is that you learn as a leader about what happened in history. How the community got started, it's really, really simple, really. For those of you that don't know, way back in the day, actually not that far back, maybe like 50 years ago, 60 years ago, it was not uncommon for people with disabilities of all kinds to be segregated from the community, to be put in institutions, to be either killed off, sterilized so they couldn't have children, because there was this whole move to make what society called a perfect race. A lot of us associate this with the Holocaust, which is true, and a lot of people think that America went in to the Holocaust to stop Hitler from killing all the Jews and people he felt were not fit to be in the Aryan race. Okay? But the reality of it is that the practice of this was happening in the U.S. Okay? And if they weren't sterilized, or even if they were oftentimes put in institutions and kept away from the normal folk. All right? And what really kind of happened is that people with disabilities were like, this is whack. All right? This really sucks. And they got more and more irritated, and they came together. And they were like, we want to get the heck out. All right? So you had the people in the institutions who were like, we want out of here. All right? And then also what was happening was that people were coming home from the war, which would have been Vietnam at that time. People were coming home, and they were injured. They were missing limbs. They were amputees. They had disabilities now. And they were coming back from the war and were not given the same rights as they were when they left. And these soldiers were like, wait a minute, when I left, I was working in a steel factory. Now I can't anymore. I don't have access to employment. I don't have access to things. I want to go back to my family. I want to go back to the things I knew. So you had people who wanted out of institutions. Then you had the people that were the vets coming back from the war, who were all upset, and they came together and said, you know what? We have to stand up for ourselves to make change, to get access to things. And that's kind of how this whole disability community and this whole disability rights movement began. And a lot of youth don't understand that stuff. All right, so it's really, really important to research this, but it's also kind of cool to think about what happened. These picture here, the lady who is by this van, who is on the news, is Judy Heumann advocating. The guy in the iron lung there is Ed Roberts, who is the father of the independent living movement, and then Justin Dart, who is considered the father of the ADA. And I know some of you have done a lot of research into the ADA and probably know what it's all about, but that guy is kind of like our Martin Luther King, all right, which is kind of cool, but a lot of people don't know. You go to events and you say, who's Martin Luther King? Everybody knows. You show Justin Dart and nobody knows.
And it's not taught in school districts. So we have the women's rights movement, we have the Black History movement, but the disability community movement is nowhere to be found in regular education systems. And to me, this is just as important, to me at least, it's just as important than any other movement that has been in the United States or in our country. It's just as important, and it needs to be out there. And a lot of the times in my education classes, we'll hear about the ADA, and we'll hear about all these things and the 504 plans and all this stuff with education, but they never say who did it, who made that law in place, who fought for that. They don't say that. They just tell you about the law, and you got to follow it, because if not, you're going to get fired, and that's it. So.
Yeah, and this is, I have a cool story about Justin Dart and his wheelchair, okay? First of all, these pictures here, you see the guy on the left by the handicap sign there? That is Mike Beers. He's a disability comedian. Hilarious dude, good friend of ours from Montana, funny dude. And then you see a picture of Josie's old service dog with the statue of FDR hanging out, chilling. Okay, and then here you see, actually, this is Nickel, that conference I told you about where we got yelled at by those adults. This is all of us hanging out at a rally. And this lady back there, the old lady with the glasses smiling, is Yoshiko Dart. And what Yoshiko does, which I think is kind of cool, Justin Dart has passed, God rest his soul. Okay, but his wife is still involved in the community and actually brings his chair and his, let me see if I can go back to it if I understand Josie's computer. See him sitting here with his hat on? He at the bottom, he wore this hat everywhere. So she brings his chair and his hat. And if you're lucky enough, you get asked to take a picture with this chair. And it just so happened that I got to meet Yoshiko, and I'm like crapping my pants. Because I'm like, oh my God, that's like Justin Dart's wife. This is like the greatest moment of my life. And I actually ran into Justin Dart's wheelchair backing up next to it to take a picture. And she told me to relax. Relax, Everett, relax. I'm like, oh my God. But I almost broke it. I felt awful. So, what? Okay. All right. So, and I think this is a really good example of disability pride. So you have somebody who does humor. You have an example of advocating. And you have an example of just making a pretty cool example of FDR's statue right there. And it's all about being proud. It's all about having pride in who you are and what your disability is and what the community is. And I think that we all know this, is that accepting yourself as a person with a disability and knowing that you have the ability to change the world is what pride is. Knowing that, yes, I have a disability, and this is what this means for me, but I have the ability to change the world through what I do.
Disability community, just like the women's rights and the Black community and every different community, we have a community. We have our history, we have our humor, we have all these things up here, and we share that. We have our little funny things. We have the people that we idolize, like Justin Dart and Judy Heumann. I love Judy Heumann. She was a teacher. I mean, I idolize her. I look up to her. So we have those people that are just like Martin Luther King Jr. He was right in the foot of the Black community and the culture there. We have our own people that we look up to too. So we just have just as much right to be called a community as any other bun.
And I actually love the humor stuff right here. For those of you that can't see, there's actually like a picture. It says stairs, the final frontier. And then it shows a wheelchair with a guy with a parachute jumping off the stairs. It says stairs, the final frontier. And I think that's, I always make jokes like that. Or, people will say, you want to go for a run? Heck yes, I do. You want to go play some soccer? Sure, I'm great at that game. I actually tell people that I'm actually a gymnast, and I do the balance beam and the pommel horse like in my spare time when nobody's watching. All right? So all that kind of stuff is like humor. It's all part of like the community that we share. But I think it's cool as we sit here as a cross-disability group. And yes, Julian's back there is able to walk. But I hope after being together and learning about each other that we're like, that's kind of funny. All right? It's okay to laugh about those kind of things. It's okay to enjoy each other. It's okay to have that community because we do share the same history and the same barriers. The reality is 60 years ago, we all would have been in the same place. Okay? And people have difficulty understanding that now as youth. We really do.
And there's still some people that are in that where we were 60 years ago. There's still some people that are still there because they haven't gotten out of it yet. Even in the United States, there's still people and there's still families that are so back in the day that, that person just doesn't come out of the closet. I mean, they just stay there, and it's sad to think about, and it's funny, but yet it is sad to think about that is still happening in today's society. And even, disability closet, get in there, you can't come out today, goodbye. And that's horrible. And there's like couple years ago, we just found that little girl that was chained to a radiator, or she was chained to something for how long? I mean, it still happens because parents don't have the education at times to handle the problems that are facing, and they just don't know. They're stuck. They're hitting the wall. And I don't think it's right that they're locking them in closets. Obviously, I'm not going to say yay to that one. No way. But it happens, and it happens in other countries too. about like 6 years ago. I remember sitting there watching a show, and it was about people with CP chained to cribs. And I was like, dude, that could be my buddy Everett right now.